Okay, guys, we are gonna start. So this is IPWAVE session. Let's start with the initial slides. One thing that you have may notice, Raz is not here this time, so I will be chairing the session alone. So the usual stuff on IPR policies and on NoteWell, you should be aware of this. If no, please take a while reading the slides. Then before we actually start, well, the blue sheets are circulating, so please sign those blue sheets. We have already some note takers, so thanks for volunteering. And we are missing someone helping with the Java. Is there anyone that can do some JavaScript? Okay, thanks. So we are all set. So this is the agenda. As you saw, we have only 1 hour this time. The reason for that is that we want to really focus on the 2 work items to be really progressed and to be done hopefully by next IETF. So that's the main reason that we only ask for 1 hour this meeting. I will start with some administrative updates, and then we will have 2 presentations, one for the IPv6 over OCV draft, Alex will be presenting that, and one for the use cases, survey, and problem statement. As I will later describe, there is only 1 draft. We have merged the 2 ones that we had in 1 single document, and Chris will be presenting this. So working group status update. So we have these 2 documents in working group state. We have the transmission over IPv6 packets over OCV. We will have a presentation from Alex on the version 11. So we had a lot of revisions of the document. We issued a working group last call. We got some comments, and we believe that we needed was a new update of the version. And we will follow up with a short working group last call just to be sure that all people that provided comments, the comments were properly addressed. So we want to keep it short and hopefully submit the documents to IG in 1 month or less after the IETF. So that's the goal. Then we have the other one. As I mentioned, we have the survey document and the problem statement document that originally were 2 different drafts. But we believe that there was some overlap that made it easier to focus on one single document. So we requested the authors to merge, and they nicely accepted and provided and did the exercise to combine in 1 single document that will be presented today. The idea with this document is to really focus all the energy of the group in the next few cycles to make sure that we probably in London we are able to do working group last call on that document. This is basically the picture of where we are. We are a bit delayed with a couple of milestones, but we believe that on the IPv6 over OCV we should be done by December. And on the other one, well, basically May 2018 was the goal for the second document. Since we merged, I think that we should be able to achieve that milestone by May with the merged document as well. So this is basically what I mentioned before, next steps to be done with the first document and to get reviews for the second one, the one that has been merged, in order to make progress and to be done by next IETF. I just realized that I forgot at the beginning to do some agenda bashing. So I don't know if there is any comment on the agenda that I presented here. Okay. So, well, basically that's it from the update. So we can proceed with Alex's presentation. Alex.
Hello, my name is Alexandru Petrescu, and I will present the advancement of the draft transmission of IPv6 packets over 802.11 networks operating in mode outside the context of a basic service set. The version of the draft is 11. I am the speaker. My co-authors are Nabil Benamar, Jerome Hairi, Christian Huitema, J. H. Lee, Thierry Ernst, and a few others. We are in Singapore. The contents of the presentation, I will introduce briefly the changes, then I will spend more time on the changes themselves. And I'm trying here to highlight the unresolved issues. So these are the two unresolved issues right now. Are we going to request or not request a group ID from IANA? And is neighbor discovery adapted for OCB or is not adapted for OCB? These are the two issues that are still under discussion. And if there are any comments on these two issues, maybe you can make them now, or because later I'll go to the changes, not to any other thing.
Shri Gundavali, Cisco. So Alex, I thought at least for the group ID, we had good amount of discussions. So in my mind, I thought there was a clear consensus. At least we were not able to explain why it was needed, right? So that is one point.
I don't hear you, excuse me. I don't hear you well.
You can't hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the discussion is closed, you mean? With, yes.
First
with
one,
the
I
group.
believe it's closed.
Yes, yes, it's...
The conclusion was that people think it's not needed. At
Yes.
least there is not enough justification as why it's needed.
I agree. There is not enough justification at this time to request group ID from IANA. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
Closed.
second part, right? Is ND adapted? I'm not understanding what that sentence is, but right now we are making an assumption that this draft assumes that the ND will be taken care of in some other document, right? So with that, anything around ND will be removed or whatever, right? So is that, so I'm not seeing what the issue is.
Yeah, that's the only open discussion. So both of them could be considered closed, I think. Yep. Yep. Okay, so now for your information, we will go through the changes to our version of the document. This is the overview of the changes. Since September and further during the last call, the draft was reviewed in detail by 7 reviewers: José Santalozano, Sri Gundaveli, Sandra Cespedes, François Simon, Abdusalam Barion, Margaret Cullen, and Michel Wetterwald. So these reviewers provided detailed comments. We analyzed them and we solved them. And I'm going to show the changes. All this has already been reported in the drafts. And all these changes are listed in the changelog section of the draft. But this changelog section will disappear once in the later phases, okay? So this is maybe the last chance you see this changelog section. So my goal in presenting these changes is for you to see them, and I would like to get confirmation especially from the reviewers, that their comments have been addressed correctly. So these changes are grouped in different categories. First are the technical changes, which are the most important ones. Okay, we will show the technical changes one by one, and that's where I will spend most of the time. Then there are some changes in authorship, many changes in the references, what are the documents that have been referenced, some terminology changes, some sections that have been moved out or put in the appendix, and a few changes about security. This is the overview of the changes. So I propose now that we go on the first topic, which is the technical changes. And they are all grouped into one slide that you see here. And I will go in detail one by one on each of these topics. And I hope each of these resolution addresses correctly the comments from the reviewers. Many reviewers have already expressed satisfaction with this, but I would like, if any, opposition to. So we had a comment on the link local addresses. So I clarified that by adding text that suggests that the use of link local addresses is easier on the OCB links rather than globally unique addresses that need to receive a prefix. Link local addresses are easier because we know very easy how to form them. The prefix is universal, and there is no need of a router that sends the prefix. Okay, so we add a brief text that suggested that it's easier to use link local addresses than global addresses on the same link. Then earlier, the draft had a speculation on the adoption of TSA messages. TSA is a 802.11 message, stands for timestamp advertisement. And yeah, in the draft, we were saying that if this TSA message is going to be implemented, then it's going to be a good indicator for handover. But we moved all the handover discussion out, and also we prefer to refrain from any speculation on adoption or not adoption of TSA, because it is a link layer message. Okay, we don't know what the link layer message implementers will implement or not. So we removed that phrase. We had also a brief phrase that said that the neighbor discovery protocol is used. We added, but it's in the appendix section. If you search for a neighbor discovery protocol, it's somewhere deep in the appendix, and we said that it's going to be used. And also some brief phrase about how two stations discover each other, but it's really 1 or 2 lines, is no messages or no protocol that defines it. In the subnet structure section, we added brief phrase that it says that the external network is the wireless network between cars, is relatively ephemeral and has these problems of subnet structure or of OCB. At the same time, the internal network, the in-car network, is relatively stable because very often inside the car there is Ethernet, many kinds of Ethernet, time schedule Ethernet, advanced feature Ethernet, but that's more stable inside the car. The problems of subnet structure may be happening outside the car, between cars. That's OCB. We added a phrase also that explains that both .11 data and .11 QoS data headers are currently being used on OCB mode, and also in the future they may be used. It's 2 different kinds of 802.11 headers, okay? It's data and QoS data. A very important point that resulted in our discussion is the removal of the per channel IPv6 prohibition text. Up to now, we had a statement specifying clearly that IPv6 is forbidden on some particular channel. But there was argument and counter-argument between different parties about which of these channels are allowed to do IPv6 or no, and which are dedicated to safety, and whether or not IPv6 is safety or not safety, and whether in general IP could be used as a safety capacity or no. So in the end, we decided, with advice from specialists from these other organizations, to just get rid of this prohibition text, because it really does not exist. So we removed the per channel IPv6 prohibition text. Also, another removal is we had earlier a statement that suggested that for routing purposes, a prefix exchange mechanism could be needed between cars. And we removed that text because it sounded too much like a requirement, and this draft does not implement that requirement. We removed the text that suggests that for routing purposes, a prefix exchange mechanism could be needed. This does not mean that in the future we will not look at prefix exchanges mechanism because they are important at least for ISO. Remove the text requesting a new group ID for multicast for OCB. This is clear. We added a clarification what means 3333 in the section address mapping multicasts. We added a note that states that the manner in which two stations set the communication channel is not described in this document. Somewhere in the appendix, we added a time qualifier to state that each node is represented uniquely each node is represented uniquely at a certain point in time. This is somewhere in the appendix about identifying nodes and so on. And we shortened the paragraph on forming and terminating the 802.11 OCB links. So basically, these are the technical changes. And now it is time to still discuss on these technical changes, whether you are happy or not happy in the way they have been addressed. I believe most of reviewers are happy with this way, and yeah.
So Shri again. So Alex, I thought on the QoS stuff, I thought at least the input was not to touch on that, right?
Not to?
Yeah, not to include any explanation on that unless you have sufficient data as how QoS is going to see. We don't have a link model. We don't have we haven't discussed that in this document, right? In the absence of that, I don't know how the WMM cost works and all of that. So at least my recommendation was not to touch on the QoS stuff. That was at least that's what I remember saying that. And there was.
Sri, I don't remember having discussed QoS with you. I took all your comments into account, and there was no comment about QoS. There was lots about subnet structure, yes, but nothing about QoS. But the QoS data headers are used in some deployments. Okay, I can send you packet captures from itsforge.net, and this reflects what some trial deployments use.
So is it, so when we say QoS here, right, we are not talking about any of the WMM AC or any of that, or what exactly is the scope? Is it just saying, are we just saying that on the driver we'll have 3 buffers or whatever, and we are maintaining 3 queues? Is that at that level, or what does QoS mean here in this case?
This means .11 QoS data headers. Okay, if you look at the .11 headers, there are normal .11 headers and .11 QoS data headers. Okay, 2 different kinds of headers in 802.11. And at this time, some people use just .11 data headers, others use .11 QoS data headers. Okay, so this is what is in some trials.
So just to complement, my understanding that this refers just to the encapsulation from 11.11 of the IPv6 packets, not to any QoS actual implementation of the data plane, right?
Yes, nothing. We don't say anything about traffic class or flow label, which are IP headers.
Okay. Then it's fine. Yeah.
Or diffserv, or no, we don't know that. Okay. It's just the .11 data headers. Okay, we don't modify them. Okay.
So on the technical comments, as I mentioned before, we plan to do a 1 week short working group last call after IETF, just to be sure that all these changes, people that provided comments are happy with that. So please, once issued the working group last call, just say, okay, I'm fine with the changes, or this is something that requires to be done.
Okay, so now I'll go to more the other comments, which are more, for example, the changes of authorship. We have updated the affiliation of one author, and we updated the authorship on the first page and the contributors section. The goal here was to have only 5 authors on the first page and have the contributors listed in a separate section at the end of the draft. And also, we also have an acknowledgements section. This is to follow guidelines in a specific RFC that points to good recommendations about how many authors or editors and authors and so on. Yeah, so that was about authorship. References, there were many comments about references. I will go through them one by one. We added an informational reference to ETSI's IPv6 over geo networking document. Added more references to IETF and ETSI security protocols. Updated some references that evolved from ID to RFC, because when we started these drafts many months or years ago even, since then some of the internet drafts that were cited evolved and became RFCs. So now we refer to these RFCs instead of their internet draft form. Also, some old RFCs became new RFC. It's the case most notably with our base IPv6 document, which is RFC 2460, became recently RFC 8200. So starting now, anybody talking about IPv6 should be talking about RFC 8200. We added also a reference to multicast extensions to IPsec architecture RFC. This was a suggestion from Sri. Added a reference to a personal submission of 2464 bis. I remind RFC 2464 is IPv6 over Ethernet, and it's a very old RFC, and there is a personal proposal to an internet draft called RFC 2464 bis. We removed all informative references to FCC documents because they were not cited anymore. We updated the reference of 802.11 OCB document from -2012, this is the year number, to the IEEE 802.11 2016, which is really the most recent reference of 802.11 that cites the OCB. In the link local address section and in the Slack section, added text and references to opaque interface identifiers and to stable interface IDs. These are also new RFCs that came out in the recent months. Removed all the references to RFC 3963, 4429 RFC. These are mobile IP and NEMO references, neighbor discovery. They were referred in the handover discussion section because earlier we had a handover discussion section and we decided to move out this handover discussion. So these documents are no longer cited here, and it's not good to refer to documents that are not cited. Finally, we updated a reference from an individual submission that is now a working group item. The survey document that has joined with a problem statement document. So we now refer to this document, which is a new working group document. Moved the draft IEEE 802.11 to informative references, which is a working group item, but it's not an RFC, so it is an informative references. So these are all the changes about the references, and we believe at this time, with these references in the draft, we are up to date with everything, with all the new RFCs, with all the new IEEE documents, with all the new internet drafts, and it's very complete. The terminology. This was again some new modifications here. We added a new OBU term, which is actually OBRU for onboard router unit. Improved the roadside unit term definition. Removed the ETTC term, stands for expected time. I forgot exactly what it was, but it was not really relevant for IP. It was for mainly for link layer. We replaced all occurrences of 802.11p and 802.OCB with 802.11-OCB. So starting now, we only talk about 802.11-OCB. No more 802.11p. We define the term Wi-Fi. Now, since we removed this country level text from somewhere else, we added that any implementation should comply with standards and regulations set in the different countries for using that frequency band. We added it in the term definition where it defines 802.11 OCB. In the RSU term definition, added a sentence that explains the difference between RSU and RSRU in terms of number of interfaces and in terms of IP forwarding. Replaced with at least 2 IP interfaces with at least 2 real or virtual IP interfaces. Added a term in the terminology for OBU, since we removed it earlier. But this OBU definition here is left empty, since we had several remarks that say that OBU is defined elsewhere, not at IETF. So right now we have this OBRU defined at IETF, and OBU that is defined elsewhere in other organizations. We added a clarification that it is an OBU or an OBRU in this phrase. A vehicle embarks an OBU or an OBRU. We checked the entire document for a consistent use of terms OBU and OBRU. Clarified what it means, no association needed. Added a note. Added a note that clarifies that in Europe, the regional authority is not ETSI, but ECC CEPT based on European norms from ETSI. Other note says that P is a letter that identifies the amendment. That's about terminology. We moved many sections out of the main part of the document. Basically, either we put them out of the document altogether or we put them in an appendix section. This was following many suggestions that says the draft should be really short and the meat, that's the main part of the document, is really a few pages long, 12 or 13 pages. Okay. How we achieved that is by we had a packet capture example and we moved it in an appendix called implementation status. We added a YANA consideration section, but we removed all requests of OCB interfaces. Okay. We moved the EPD description to an appendix on its own. EPD stands for Ether Type Packet Dissector, and it describes how IEEE believes the distinction of ether type should be happening. It's still it's a good view, but it is an IEEE view. It's not the IP view. So we moved it in a separate section. The tutorial section on OCB mode, what OCB introduces to .11 has been also moved to an appendix. And the references to RFC 3963, I already said that. So these are the basic section movement changes that have been performed, and that allows us to have a really small main part, which is only 12 or 13 pages long. And of course, whenever we prepare a draft for submission to ISG, we want it to be very well readable. And we want it to be an invitation for ISG to read and to agree with it. And this is why we did many changes for readability, as many as we could. For example, we cleaned the abstract, we reformulate many phrases for better readability, many typographical errors. We went several times through the document with spell checkers and with human spell checkers. I take this opportunity to say that we We also worked on this draft in a cooperative way. We put the draft in on a GitHub repository, which allowed us, the authors, to find and modify concurrently the typographical errors. And now I also heard that there is some mechanism to submit directly from GitHub to the IETF, which we never tried, but it's a good news for us to submit directly from GitHub. And we shortened significantly the address mapping sections by removing the text copied from RFC 2464 and rather referring to it. We added figure captures, figure numbers, references, and replaced whenever it said section with just section, and shortened a few paragraphs, substituted lowercase for capital char or must in the appendices, because it was said that the appendices should not contain capital should and capital must, and that so we put all the should and must that are in the appendices, we put them in lowercase. Finally, we had a few changes about security. We had to add risks of spoofing and hijacking, a small text that was suggested by the reviewers. This is the last slide of the changes. And I think we addressed all the comments from all the reviewers. I wanted to thank the designated reviewers and the voluntary reviewers. About 7 public reviews, many more, or some other also in private. And yeah, we addressed all the comments with these changes. This version dash 11 is like 802.11.
Okay, thank you. So, as any comments or questions, Charlie?
I'm Charlie Perkins. I just have a very small question. It's about not defining things like OBU. That's very surprising to me. I mean, you can make a definition and then a citation for you might say, authoritative definition, but really, if you want to make the document readable, you should allow people to know what the words mean without going there somewhere else to figure it out.
Yes, so OBU is a term that is defined outside the IETF, and that definition is not consistent with what we see as OBU.
No, you don't. It's not that you providing a definition means that you are assuming the normative ownership of that definition. You're just defining the term, and if you make a citation to some external document, then it's clear where the definition authority really is.
But if our definition of OBU is different than the definition of OBU by other organizations, people are confused. This is why they insist, these other people insisted not to use the term OBU.
Well, then you have to balance. How much can you confuse them by providing the best definition you can versus they have no clue?
It's hard to persuade somebody to, whether or not he or she has no clue. So
okay, well then I'll just speak for myself.
Yes,
I have a hard time, with reading things like that.
Yeah, it's also my case sometimes. So, but what would you suggest now?
I would suggest making a definition that just says what it means, and then making a citation for the standards body that created the term.
It's something that is doable, but then it should have to be defended.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, just do it.
Okay, well, anyway, that's my point.
I agree, but if I could add the definition of OBU if, for example, you suggested that definition, and I could put it there.
I mean, the name of the working group is IPWAVE, and IETF does not own WAVE.
Okay.
But one clarification question. You didn't define OBU because you are using the OBU RU, right?
Now we defined OBRU, yes.
And you are not using OBU in the draft at all.
We say OBU in the definition section. There is OBU colon. OBU is defined elsewhere, and somewhere in the text we say that, for example, a car could embark an OBRU or an OBU.
Okay, so in that case, I agree with Charlie that we need to at least reference what an OBU is, at
Yes.
least. And then we can clarify that we are referring to the OBU-RU term because this is something clearly specified and defined in the document.
Eric Klein. I have a sort of a random, obscure technical question, purely because of my IEEE ignorance. It's about Appendix F4, where it talks about MAC address generation. It says you can basically generate them by generating 48 bits of total randomness and then setting locally administered and unicast. Is that actually true? My understanding of IEEE OUI allocations was that even when you got a 24-bit OUI or a 36-bit OUI, you still had nominal control of your space, even with the independent of the globally locally assigned bit. Is that not true?
So, yeah, if you're asking me, programmatically speaking, yeah, anybody could generate a MAC address on the computer. Now, whether IEEE suggests it or accepts it or not, I do not know. Okay, so
It seems to be recommended in F4.
F4.
I'm not sure this is actually like a legal thing to do. I'd like to see a citation for IEEE document that says whether or not this is really a cool thing, or if somebody knows. Do you know?
I thought, maybe from what I remember, I thought the text was around generating the identifiers, the 64-bit identifiers based on the MAC address. I didn't remember, or maybe I completely missed that.
MAC address generation.
Really? That is weird.
46 remaining bits set to the random value.
No, I don't know why that should be there. Yeah.
So,
I think
is this something that you think could be clarified by removing the term MAC and putting ID instead of MAC?
Generating an IP address is a separate thing, right? That's address formation. There are other IPv6 standards for that, like in 6-man. This section seems to be about MAC address formation, and I'm not entirely sure it complies with what IEEE wants to do with their identifier space. Obviously, anybody can do anything. You can send any packet you want. It's just software, but we shouldn't recommend against something that's in their identifier space. I don't know what it is, which is why I'm asking.
I agree with that. I think that it's worth checking with IEEE guys. As far as I remember, you can only change if you change the bit for the global local thing. Otherwise, you cannot change. But this is my last, what I know from the last time I checked, and I know that they have a group working on specifically that kind of changes for privacy. So I don't know if they changed or recommended a different way because of that work. But before, you could only change if you change that bit. I mean, if it's local, you can change. Otherwise,
yeah, if you're going to randomly generate it, you do have to set the local bit. But what I don't know is whether or not you can overwrite all the other 46 bits, or if you have to respect some OUI boundaries.
I think you could change the 46. That was my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's worth checking. Suresh Krishnan, I think it's worth checking, but like I kind of think like same as Carlos, but Jody's here, so I can talk to Jody, and yeah, but I can probably like talk to somebody. Like there's like a bunch of people here, like maybe Bob is here somewhere. So I'll take an item for myself to actually check this to make sure it complies.
Hello, Misha Vetterwald. I don't want to reopen the discussion, but can you remind us why the multicast specific address has been dropped? I thought it was a very good idea to identify the vehicular network in case of multicast, broadcast of messages.
You mean the group ID for the OCV, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, at least, I mean, my understanding from the discussion is that the group agreed that this is not required, or at least we identify or agree on having a reason for that. Also, there was some arguments that having a group for identifying a link layer specific technologies was not a nice thing to do. And what I suggested that we leave that out for this document, and if there is any additional discussion that proves that that's required, we can have a different document addressing that point. But at this now, my reading that this is not consensus on this, and there are some concerns about having that group ID.
Okay, so it is not a final decision, it can be reopened.
Yeah, it's a final decision for this document, but if there are proofs that this requires a consensus in the group, we can discuss in a different document. Yes.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
And yeah. Otherwise, Michel, all your other comments are okay now. Yes. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alex. I have one question to David, to Suresh, on the procedure. I mean, as I mentioned, I will issue a short working group last call for the document, but then in our charter, we have that the document will be reviewed by 6 months. So how do you want to do that? After that working group last call?
Suresh Krishnan. So I think I can do like a parallel working group last call in 6 months if that's required. But before that happens, I really want your comments like to be addressed before the document goes forward. And because I had like very, very similar comments, right? Like, and this does not read like a standard, like the way it's written today, right? Like like that's my feel. So I think like Carlos probably has the same feel as me, right? So so if the goal of this is to say like, okay, this is how we map 802.11 OCB to Ethernet and then use 2464 to do the rest, that's fine, right? Like, but I didn't think that's what we were starting off to do. But that's perfectly fine. Like, I'm not gonna like dispute the working group doing that, right? But that's probably like something in the tone of the document that needs some change. So I'm not talking about the content itself, but like how the document is written probably needs some minor modifications before it like gets out of the working group. So just take a look at Carlos's mail, and then we can take the document forward. I don't see any technical issues with the document itself, right? Like, it's like most of these things have been proven already in the field, right? Like we all know, like, how we are mapping Wi-Fi into like Ethernet emulation and everything. So like a lot of these things have been proven. So I don't have a concern about the content of the document itself. It's just probably like some wording changes here and there that needs to happen.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. So then we can move to the second presentation. Okay, gonna start.
Hello, everyone. This is Evan Shen, or you can call me Chris, from Sunjinguan University, South Korea. So this draft is co-author draft with Jaehong Ho, Nabia Sanjo, Jeremy, Dapong, Theo, Charlie, Alex, and Evan Shen, Michelle.
Sorry. Just one interruption. Since we are a bit late with the agenda, you have only 15 minutes, okay?
Okay. So next. So since last meeting, so we have updated our draft. We merged our previous two drafts into one draft. Previous two drafts are the networking survey and the problem statement. Now we have IPWAVE vehicular networking. So this draft. So we also updated several text issues and clarify some terminologies and some terms. And also we surveyed more papers, research papers related to routing and the mobility management. For detail, the first one is for the routing section. Actually, we added a new location, a new research paper to analyze the routing issue. And also we moved a paper from a routing section to the mobility management section based on reviewing. And also we augmented the gap analysis and problem statement in this subsection. So we also had a lot of other comments and modification about the draft. So I just, since the overall contents are same as kind of almost same, so I just briefly introduce through the draft. So the purpose, the objective of this draft is to survey the IP-based vehicular networks and also specify the problem. So we have along this draft, we have several assumptions. So here I need to emphasize is that so we focused on not only the .11p or DSRC physical link, we also focused on cellular links and also other, we can say that visible light communication. So this is the IP layer. So it can be applied to any other physical communication link. So, and we also have some roadside unit as we discussed in previous presentation. So, and also we consider a traffic control center, which is can manage the vehicular networks. So this is the current the sections. So we have we merged the two drafts together. So we have several topics: architecture, standardization, auto configuration, IP address auto configuration, routing, mobility, DNS naming, and service discovery, and security and privacy. So we for first we have use cases. We have several use cases in this draft. We surveyed navigation systems, intersection management, emergency network system, pedestrian protection system. We also have V2V use cases, which are driving safety system, automated driving system, and the V2V warning system. So as you can see in this picture, its figure, so we may have so we have V2I communication and V2V communication. So we have several issues here. So how do we assign the IP address to each vehicle? And also how do we manage the mobility, since the vehicle network has its features like fast mobility. And also we also have a service discovery. So we imagine that in the future, in each vehicle is a moving network. So there could be multiple hosts in a vehicle. So how do we deal with the service discovery? As you can see here, as I just described, inside the vehicle, there could be a moving network. And also this is a V2V, two vehicles cases. So yeah, so most of the parts of this contents are same as the previous one. So we have IPv6 addressing issue. So how do we deal with IPv6 address? And also, so that is for V2I and this is for V2V. Also here we have the neighbor discovery issue. So since the vehicle's mobility is high and dynamically change, and we need to deal with how do we kind of find neighbor service and how to find the neighbor routers. Yeah, this is next topic is IP address auto configuration. And another issue is the DNS naming service. For actually, for if we imagine that in each vehicle, there could be several, in each vehicle is a moving network. So in the vehicle, we could have the DNS server, or in ICU can be also fixed network. In ICU, we also can have the DNS server. So how do we deal with this DNS issue? And also another important issue is IP mobility support. So far for the IPv6, we already have the mobile IPv6 and the proxy mobile IP and NEMO, and also so basically we can summarize them into two categories. So one is the centralized, another one is the distributed way. So then for this vehicular environment, how do we can like come up some new mobility management issue, or do you have a question?
Yeah, one just comment, right? I think,
Okay.
See the problem, I raised this issue as part of the other document review. Like, we don't have a clear explanation on the link model.
Okay.
We don't even know what is a hosted prefix. We don't even know what exactly is a link, because nodes are always moving, right? How the link is formed, and is there a concept of a router? Who is hosting that prefix? Any of that discussion is not there. Now, in the absence of that, I think that is the main issue. If you lay out certain assumptions saying that these are my assumptions, then you can build all of this problem list. Now, without that, all of this problem list are like, I don't know how to review it. So I think I think that is the fundamental issue I have. Like, the DNS or many other things are not making sense to me.
Okay. So yeah, we will discuss it in detail. Okay.
Sri, I have a question. If we add something about this ND problem, about who is the router, who hosts the prefix, about this kind of subnet structure problem inside this, would this make sense?
Yeah, at least there will be some basis, right? At least I can assume things, I can identify the issues in that context, right? Now, without laying out those assumptions, I don't know.
I think that the document should identify those issues, because this is supposed to be a problem statement in addition to a survey. So, and this links also to the discussion that we may have in the future about what to do next in the group. So what to do next in the group should be identified in this document, because this is supposed to be the problem statement. So,
Eric Klein, I think also if you're going to continue to have the problem statement talk about neighbor discovery stuff, you should maybe run it by 6-man, because among other things, there are some things that are not in here, like use of optimistic addresses is not discussed. And that makes some things much faster than like DHVV6, right? Okay. So there's a lot more to consider than is actually present here in the document.
Yeah, we will look into that. Okay. So, okay. So
you have 5 minutes, okay?
So okay, the next topic is service discovery. So we know we can use the MDNS for the service discovery, and also we can use the DNS-based service discovery, and also we can use the neighbor discovery extension for the service discovery. Also, we noticed that in the DNS-SD working group, they are working on extension of the service discovery based on MDNS. So then we will look into that their work and to see if we can get something. And okay, so this is a kind of example for the service discovery. So imagine that we have in a vehicle there could be many element components, engine, cruise control. So how do we, so for vehicle to vehicle, how do we discover those services so to provide better service to the in the application layer? And also we compared the MDNS and the service discovery and the Vehicular ND neighbor discovery process, numerically. Next issue is security and privacy. So we have talked about this. We utilize the authentication and access control. And also we consider privacy support for period change of MAC and IP address. Yeah. So this topic was discussed a lot in last meeting. And okay, also how do we secure those confidential data when vehicles or V2I exchange the packet? So let's summarize the whole document. So we can conclude that we can utilize the IP wave or DSRC as IPv6 in the vehicular network. And also we should adopt some new service discovery mechanism, like we can utilize the IPv6 neighbor discovery to do the service discovery. And also we want to kind of need to support that IPv6 link concept. Another issue is how do we deal with the IP address auto-configuration? Eventually, we have a routing and the mobility management. Actually, this is a very important issue in current problem statement. So next step, so since the ethics draft changed a lot, so we need to synchronize with the IPv6 over .11 OCP, so we can, like for example, ISU. So in this document, we just use ISU as or OCP. Yeah, those terms kind of different, so we need to synchronize. And also, in next step, we also need to enhance different from the different aspects from industrial, automobile companies and the car-to-car communication consortium and the 5G automotive association and all those. Yeah. Also, we will enhance the terminology section. So, based on current review, some authors or reviewers kind of have question about the different terminologies, different terms, so they kind of get confused. So we also need to enhance those parts. And also based on in the emails, in the email list, we also need to include the physical communication constraints. And I think the ethics has some comment about this. And also our plan is in the next IETF meeting, so we will have a last call. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the idea is to try to get reviews for this document, and keep in mind that we need to, for future work that we can take in the group, that should be reflected in the problem statement. So, and once we are done with the IPv6 over OCV document, we want to open discussion for potential rechartering topics, but those topics should have been addressed in this document. So please, those that want to bring new things in the working group, check and review this document and ensure that those topics are reflected here. That's it. That's all for today. Thanks a lot for coming. And what are the other blue sheet? What is it? Thank you.